escalations in nation-state cyber attacks will cause a United Nations cybersecurity treaty.
Yeah.
Which I think is another possibility for this next year.
This one I actually think is within the realm of possibility. In fact, I know the UN has been talking about, cyber warfare like treaties in the past. I don't think they've, what do you call it when the UN does it? Is it still ratified? I don't think they've passed or ratified anything yet, but I do know that they've had meetings about it.
Because it seems like in the past few years, whether it be they're becoming more publicized or more rapidly occurring, there have been a lot more nation-state attacks that we've found out about.
Frankly, it started with Stuxnet. I still think that's the Pandoras Box, but there's been new Pandoras Boxes since then. Like you mentioned North Korea. I think when this type of cyber espionage really gets unacceptable and starts to need multiple governments to come together to have a treaty is when there's collateral damage in the civilian landscape. And I think North Korea is the one that's most obviously allegedly pushed this one. I mean, when they first attacked Sony Pictures, purely a private company, WannaCry
took down the NHS, basically.
Yes, and then not only critical patient stuff, but billions in economic damage for what was nothing. I mean, if you believe the allegations that was North Korea, and if it was purely monetary reasons because they are under lots of sanctions, so maybe they're trying to get money, they only made, $250,000 in WannaCry
Less
ransom?
than that. I think it was like 140,000.
They barely made a cent, and yet it cost $4 billion estimated damages to businesses. And that's just unacceptable.
A month later was NotPetya, which was appears to be targeted at Ukraine, but I mean, it hit like FedEx, it hit Maersk, the shipping company.
The shipping company.
Took them down for like a week and like caused billions of damages.
And same thing. And that one was actually trying to damage systems, granted, originally targeted in Ukraine. But that kind of thing is where, if nation states are doing black ops cyber espionage against each other, I may still disagree with using civilian software to do that. If it doesn't have civilian repercussions, that's one thing. As soon as you start having civilian repercussions, I think something needs to be done. I think, as you said, more of those incidents have come to light just the past year. It seems to be escalating, not de-escalating. We didn't even talk about the big one. We just got past the U.S. midterms, but election hacking, whether that be direct hacking, which doesn't seem to have happened yet, or more propaganda is another thing. So I think we're just hitting the tipping point where whether or not it's really effective, we can argue. There's probably lots of UN treaties that have been, countries have not really followed and not have too many teeth in them. But I do think bringing a treaty to the UN is something that will happen very shortly.
And you got to imagine a treaty would, I mean, you mentioned not having a lot of teeth, but it might at least allow retaliation at some point. Because, I mean, for now, like if you go and invade a country, it's war. And they're going to attack you back. But if you go like hack their systems, right now we kind of like, oh, that was bad. Don't do that again. And there's no real like retaliation. Maybe
and country by country, they try to sanction, but until you have the global, everyone doing it, like a sanction from one country is less effective than a sanction from a group of countries.
Right.
And I think for some things they may even allow, but this will be the scary thing. Do you allow a physical, reaction to a cyber attack? And in that case, maybe there's certain cases where you should, but it's so
scary.
hard to attribute that you really want to have all your I's dotted and T's crossed before you start to allow that sort of thing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if this actually comes about. I mean, it does seem to be that we're really going towards that way with all the attacks that we've been seeing over the past few years. So do we have a defensive tip for this one? Don't hack other countries?
I don't know what the defensive tip is this. I mean, my issue with nation-state hacking in general is it ups the game for cyber criminals. The one thing I don't like about nation-state hacking is it has been leaking. Stuxnet leaked, resulted in better malware from cyber criminals because they started duplicating techniques they saw before. We've talked a lot about the WannaCry. Eternal Blue was an NSA leaked 0-day, which upped the ability of a lot of cyber criminal malware. So I don't think any of this nation state stuff directly affects, although again, some of them are actually going after private companies, but most of the time, Russia's not going to go after your little small to medium business. But the result you have to realize that's happening is normal cyber criminal malware is getting sophisticated faster. And I think it's because of seeing some of the leaked stuff from nation state attacks. So ultimately, it just means we all have to up our cybersecurity. Right now, there's no body that's protecting the world against these attacks. So it really is up to you to bring your security game up to snuff for even the more advanced attacks.
Yeah. Well, that was doom and gloom.
I know. Like we said, dystopian predictions.
Yeah.